Welcome to the Unforgettable Conversations podcast, where every week I introduce you to people from all walks of life, from experts in their fields to ordinary people who have had extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Sandy McKenna. Today's guest was born with normal hearing but began to lose it while she was in elementary school. In fact, in the last 4 generations of her family, everyone was born with normal hearing, and eventually they all lost their hearing in different ways. This is so extremely rare that there are only 4 families in the entire world that have this particular gene. It didn't stop her, though. Fearless, she discovered barefoot water skiing as a teenager and began water skiing every chance she got until one day she took a really hard spill. She was 19 and instantly went from hard of hearing to deaf. What once was a passion that fueled her days left her for decades with a void of sadness and despair, until she saw a segment on the Today Show that altered the course of her future. Today, she is known as the Passion Mentor with a mission to help people unwrap their passions at any age. She is an author, a sought-after motivational speaker, a wife, a mom to 3 children who have all lost hearing when they were very young. And in today's unforgettable conversation, my guest, Karen Putz, shares her incredible and inspiring story and tells us the simple steps you can take to unwrap your passion. Hey, Karen, how are you?
It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you too. I am so excited to talk to you today. You are the princess of passion, and I love that about you. You are always so passionate. You're always so excited. I love people like that. I want to see how you got to this point in your life. Let's start when you were young, your childhood and growing up.
I was born with normal hearing, and I grew up hard of hearing, and I actually became deaf at the age of 19 while I was barefoot water skiing. So that's part of my story. I am deaf. And I can see I have hearing aids on here, very colorful ones that represent water. So for me, growing up, I grew up being very ashamed of being hard of hearing, really struggling with that. And then after I became deaf, it was sort of a pivotal point in my life because I could realize I could continue to struggle or I could embrace the journey. And I chose to embrace it. And I met my husband. He is deaf. We had 3 deaf kids. Obviously genetic. 3 of the kids were born with normal hearing, and they all lost their hearing in different ways. So, that's part of my story growing up. And then at the age of 44, I got back on water again, thanks to a 66-year-old woman that I saw on the Today Show.
And how did that change for you, deciding to go back?
Changed everything. It made me who I am today. This whole passion journey started with that Today Show segment. I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and I see this 66-year-old woman barefoot water skiing with a big, huge smile on her face. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, I want that. Because you see, before that, I felt very old at 44. I felt, midlife has hit. My kids don't need me as much. What am I going to do next? Life was good, but it was missing passion. It was missing that, that joy that we had within us. So I met this 66-year-old woman, flew down to Florida. She introduced me to the world barefoot champion, Keith St. Ange. He got me back on the water on the first try. And that was 11 years ago. And I've been barefoot water skiing ever since.
Now, that's how you lost your hearing, though, when you fell in the water and you thought it was water in your ear and you would be able to hear again. So that's really something to overcome. I mean, that was a huge.
Yeah, it was definitely a full circle moment. The very thing that brought me sadness was now bringing me happiness again.
That's awesome. That's really incredible. Do you still water ski?
I do. I am actually doing what I call a passion quest. And I'm barefoot water skiing in all 50 states. And I've done 22 of them so far.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. So where are you going next? Where are you going to water ski next?
Hawaii.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Thanks to Southwest Airlines, we're going to Hawaii.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm excited to watch that. You teach other people how to find their passion, how to unearth it. How does one unearth their passion?
Here's the thing. A lot of times we think that a passion is something we find or something that we do, but it's much deeper than that. Passion is how you live. It's not necessarily that one thing that you find and you do and it defines you. It's not that. Passion has 5 levels to it. And at the very bottom, basic level, passion is curiosity. Think about it. When you were a little kid, you were curious about things and you asked questions and why, and you wanted to know more. And that's where passion is born. But it gets squashed out of us by routine, by adulthood, by things we should do, things that we're supposed to be. So the very first level is curiosity. The second level is that learning stage. We identified something, maybe you tell me something that you're curious about learning.
Well, doing a podcast. I was really curious about it. I've always wanted to do it since I was a little kid. And so that's how this came about. That was what I was curious about.
Okay, so think about this. You're curious, then you learn about it. Then you get to the excitement stage, the enthusiasm stage. I like this. This is cool. This is fun. And then the next stage is acknowledgement that, oh my gosh, I really want this in my life. And then the very, very top stage of passion is the recognition stage. Other people recognize your passion and they identify it with you. So that's what I call a clear path. The CLEAR. It just explains so much because here's the thing. A lot of people never get to the top. Why? Because the surprising meaning behind the word passion is the willingness to suffer. When things get hard, a barrier comes up, we drop it. So we never get to that high, amazing recognition state because we're back out of fear. It's too much work. I won't succeed or self-talk. And that just kills the passion.
And you're really inspiring because it wasn't easy for you to go after your passion. I mean, I don't think so. I'm one who lives in fear of everything. I am afraid of everything. I mean, I could never imagine myself barefoot water skiing. I just couldn't. So, and you not being able to hear. So how do you communicate with the driver of the boat?
You know, it is hard when there's 5, 6, 7 people in the boat. It's frustrating because a lot of conversations go on and I'm left out. It is just a fact of life. I've been so fortunate that the people that I barefoot water ski with are very accommodating, very kind people. They slow down, they repeat. My driver and I, Kit St. Ange, we had a great way of communicating. He would do different things, you know, like, for example, he would bang on the boom if I needed to do something different. We had a communication going. You know, he always made sure that I was looking at him. And the nice thing about it is that when you are going 42 miles an hour and the boat engine is roaring, I have an advantage because I can lip read. So he could tell me all these instructions without screaming. So in some ways, there's a death game right there. You know, now obviously when I'm going backwards, everybody else can wear a helmet and I can't. So there's got to be an accommodation there. But I also think there's an advantage because I can't hear, there's nothing distracting me.
Now, what does it feel like to you when you're barefoot water skiing? What are you thinking about? I mean, it's got to be freeing for one.
Stay up, don't fall. You're going 42 miles an hour on your little feet, 1 centimeter off, and boom, you go. So there's not a lot to think about. You have to concentrate so deeply, so hard when you're going that fast.
What does it do to your feet, the soles of your feet?
Well, it cleans them really good. That's for sure. And sometimes it feels like razor blades. If you're going a long time, your feet start to burn. So it becomes a challenge to stay up on the water for a long time.
Does it hurt them? I mean, physically hurt them?
Yeah, if you're barefoot a long time, you're 42 miles an hour, that water is like friction.
Oh, you're a tough cookie, sister.
No, I think for all of us, we have something that just grabs our attention, and that's that passion. So people are willing to go above and beyond the things that they are passionate about.
Now, how do you align with your passions? How do you get in a good place so that you know that your passion is in alignment with the rest of your life?
Okay, when passion is aligned with your heart, with what you want to do with your life, there's flow. You are in a state of flow. And that is an amazing place to be, because that's the intersection of your mind and your heart and your body and what you want and what you do, like all together. It's an amazing level of joy.
I want to talk about midlife, because you said that's where really everything shifted for you and you were able to unlock your passion. So everybody finds themselves a lot of times in midlife kind of at a crossroads, like, the clock is ticking. Now what? What am I going to do? So how, when you get to midlife, can you kind of pivot and find a different way, bring some joy into your life when sometimes it's a lonely time for a lot of people?
I think midlife is the perfect time to do a pivot. And here's why. When you were younger and you're growing up, you're very influenced by a lot of things. You're still in the learning stage, you're the evolving stage of figuring out who you are, what you want to be, what you want to do. In midlife, you're very, very aware of time that you may not be aware of when you're younger. When you're younger, your whole life starts out ahead of you. In midlife, it's like, ooh, I can see the end. And it changes everything. That plus wisdom, you know yourself. You've got 40, 50, 60 years of knowing yourself better, knowing what you won't put up with anymore, knowing what's in your heart and realizing time is not on your side. So you have to make decisions that are really worthy of who you are, what you want, where you're going, and that's what happens. That's why so many people are having what I call a midlife, reinvention. They're reinventing themselves in ways that they never thought of before.
You talk about people reclaiming their passion in bold ways. Do you have any stories you can share?
Oh, I do. I have lots of them, but I'll tell you one that pops in my head right now. I was at a board meeting, 10:30 at night, and there were maybe a handful of board members left. We were supposed to be in bed. And then somebody said to me, what is this passion test thing that you do? And right then and there, I gave them the passion test. The passion test is a very simple test that allows you to identify your top 5 passions in life. So my coworker, Stephanie, did it, and she looked at her results and said, I'm so surprised by my results. And I said, why? She said, my number one was so simple. I just want to ride my tandem bike with my husband. She went home and she gave her husband the same test. His number one, same thing. Just wanted to ride his tandem bike with his wife. It's 4 years later. They've been riding their tandem bike every single month in 4 years. And they've traveled all over doing this. That is what passion does for you. When you identify it, you can live it.
How do you identify passion? What's an easy way that somebody might find something? Because if I asked my husband what his passion was, he would probably say golf. But it's also his biggest detriment because it aggravates him when he's not doing it 100%.
Again, it goes back to how you want to live. Not necessarily what you want to do, but how do you want to live? Some of it is identifying what you want to do because that's where it comes out. But for example, there are 3 clues to your passion. The first clue is looking back in your past. What did you do when you were a little kid and didn't have a care in the world? And it can be something simple as playing games or, horseback riding or whatever it is in your past. The second thing is when you're standing in line at the DMD, where does your mind go? You're sitting in a boring meeting or an endless Zoom meeting and your mind is just not into it. That's where your mind goes when it's bored. You could be thinking about what you're doing on the weekend or thinking about a vacation you want to take or something you want to do. Those are clues. The third clue is the Sunday list. What's on your Sunday list? Someday I'm going to go to Hawaii. Someday when the kids are grown and gone, I'm going to do this. Someday when I have more money, I'm going to do this, that, this. Why are you putting it off? So those are your 3 clues that you can start with.
Oh, those are incredible. And they're so simple and anybody could do them. Anybody. Mm-hmm. The other thing I want to ask you about is because so many people are still working. People that work because they have to work, but they're not passionate about what they're doing. So how does one become passionate about their job?
There's 2 things with that one. The first one is you can bring passion into anything, any situation that you're currently in. And I'll give you an example. I spoke at a billion-dollar company, and it was a call center, one of the most boring, repetitive jobs you can imagine. But what they did at this call center was they pulled out people's individual talents. And one woman, her talent was baking cakes. She ended up baking cakes for everybody in the company, to the point where it was a side business for her. She loved coming to work because she was able to feed her side passion with it. Just one example. The other example is this. You are not a tree. You can move. You can make different choices. If you seriously wanted to leave your job and get an RD or live in a tiny house or live below your means, it's possible. We have to make different choices. We have to be willing to make different choices because that willingness allows us to tap into the thing that's in our heart, that joy.
You're a talented speaker and an incredible author. How did that all come about for you?
Part of it is one of the clues in my past is when I was 9 years old, I loved to write. I always wanted to be a writer. I was sitting in the boat with the World Barefoot Champion asking him, what do you want to do 5 years from now? And he said, I want to write a book. So I ended up writing his book. So we have a book called Gliding Sorrows, and that's a result of that conversation. Speaking was almost by accident. I met Chad Highness, who is a very well-known speaker who uses the wheelchair. And I met with him and I said, I want to be a speaker. And he gave me some advice on getting started. I've been speaking for 10 years now.
And were you ever fearful of any of that?
Oh, yeah. Getting on stage, thinking you're going to forget something. Oh, yeah. The beginning, very, very fearful. But the more you practice something, the less the fear stands in the way. It may still always be there. But now you know how to deal with it. Now you have a skill behind you that you can bring forth. So the only way around fear is snap that through it. You gotta go through it.
Now, are there additional challenges with speaking on stage and not being able to hear?
Well, let me tell you something good is that if somebody says something bad or they heckle, I can't hear them. So that's a good thing. But yes, there's always challenges, but I always have my audience write down questions, raise their hand, I'll go and lip read them. There's always ways around it.
Now, when you were growing up, because you could hear as a young child, was that an advantage to once you lost your hearing, or was that a detriment?
I remember being able to hear when I was really young. I started losing it in elementary school. And I was not able to use the phone from that point on. I could hear like voices and things like that. It was challenging. I was always trying to fill in the blanks, lip read. Group conversations were a nightmare.
Now, when you were in school, did anybody else, couldn't hear, or did you feel singled out and alone in that way?
I was the only one. So I always felt different. I always felt weird. Everybody could hear. So my only measurement was people who had normal hearing, and I always came up short. So my self-esteem was not very good growing up.
How did you overcome that? Because, I mean, you have done more than most people who can hear. You have accomplished so many things. So I can't ever imagine you with low self-esteem or no confidence, because I just think you're absolutely amazing. So how did you come through that?
It goes back to that moment that I told you about. After becoming deaf, I struggled. I was suicidal. I considered ending my life. So it was a very, very dark time in my life. And I talk about that because I've lost family members to suicide. So I'm very upfront and I talk about that now because a lot of people hide it. But it was a very dark time in my life. But it wasn't for that decision that I made, waking up and deciding that I was going to take that choice instead of that choice. It changed everything for me. The moment I decided to embrace the journey, the good, the bad, that's when it just changed.
And were there people in your life at that time that helped you get to that point, or was it just an inner journey?
It was both. I mean, I had sign language teachers. I had good people around me. You know, I met my husband shortly after making that decision. I had some people who, you know, they would make fun of my signing, and that hurt. But I still kept going and powering through it because I knew I wanted to be the best possible deaf person I could be. I ended up teaching sign language after that.
And you're an advocate. You're an advocate for people who don't hear. What needs to change?
That's a tough one. More acceptance, more acknowledgement of differences, you know, more access. Like today, I was denied service in the drive-through at Taco Bell. Why is this happening? Why are you telling a deaf person that they need to come into the store and order and not order in the drive-through like everybody else? You know, things like that need to change. I look forward to a day where all the differences are just embraced.
That's the ideal, and hopefully we get there soon. So what is next for you? What is in your 5-year plan?
I have 4 more books I want to write, more speaking that I want to do. I want to help more deaf and hard of hearing people and empower them, you know, to make these big, bold choices in living, you know, that kind of thing. Right now, I'm actually working at a horse farm. I want to continue with horses.
Now, what can hearing people do to help empower someone who doesn't hear or is hard of hearing?
I love it when somebody signs. It just makes things easier. You know, acknowledgement, tapping on the shoulder, lip reading, facing people, hiring an interpreter, and things like that. Taking the time to sit down and talk. You know, I'm introverted, so sometimes I don't initiate conversations with people and they think, oh, well, she's stuck up or, you know. But I always appreciate people who reach out.
I'm an introvert too, so I can understand that. And I always feel like people think, oh, she doesn't like me. But a lot of times I just feel like, well, they don't want to bother with me. So I certainly understand that mindset. I love everybody. I wouldn't do what I'm doing if I didn't love people and love talking to people. But sometimes, yeah, you're just an introvert and it's hard. So it's overcoming those things. And I think for me, my passion and fear of not getting to know somebody is much greater than how uncomfortable I am as an introvert.
I totally get that. People look at me and they're like, oh, you're so outgoing, but there's no place I'd rather be than, you know, alone in my hot tub or writing, things like that.
Is there anything that we missed? Where can people find you? Where can they find your books?
They can find me at KarenPutz.com, and my book is Unwrapping Your Passion. You can find that on Amazon. Your story is in Unwrapping Your Passion. We met years ago online when we were doing the midlife road trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. It's like constant reinvention. That was over a decade ago. And that was a reinvention from what I had been doing before. And now I'm like, because of the pandemic for 2 years, couldn't travel, couldn't get out to restaurants. So really, I was kind of dead in the water about doing anything. I always wanted to talk to people. I wanted a radio show. When I was young, I thought I was going to be Lois Lane, you know, working at the Daily Planet. And then newspapers kind of went away. And then I always thought, I'd love to be on the radio. Radio would be great. Well, how can I do that? Well, podcasting is basically the radio. So during the pandemic, I said, I'm going to figure this out. I am going to figure out how I can talk to people, what I can talk about. And so my goal was to talk to people that inspired me, just brilliant people. It's kind of like my college education, my master's degree in life is talking to all these amazing people, of which you are one. In closing, what 3 tips could you give somebody? 3 tips just off the top of your head that say, these are 3 things you can do today.
Tip number 1, what would you do if you were ageless? If you didn't know the number of candles on the cake, what would you do? Number 2, passion is a gift. You have to unwrap your gift. Don't let it sit on a shelf. And number 3, if it hasn't been done before, maybe you are the one to blaze the way. And I think in closing, recognize that you have gifts, special skills, special talents, everything that makes up you. And no matter where you are in life, you can pivot at any time.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Karen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I so appreciate it. And thank you for an unforgettable conversation.
This was fun.
Thank
you for having me.
Thank you. Karen certainly is an inspiration. These last couple of years have really all but drained me of any passion I once had. You see, before the pandemic, my business partner and I traveled around the world for more than a decade, documenting these incredible adventures, eating unbelievable meals, and meeting extraordinary people. We built a business around our passion. But sometimes life throws you curveballs, or pandemics for that matter. Karen is a testament to it's what you do with the curveball that matters. Our conversation today has reignited that flame of passion in me once again, and I'm excited in this new chapter of my journey to unwrap my passion and see what gifts unfold. I completely forgot that my business partner, Rick Griffin, and I talked about our passions in Karen's book. So I opened it back up to pages 110 through 112 and read about what I said about passion. And I said, passion means dreaming big, following your heart, going after it, not letting up. Not giving up, not letting disappointment beat you or stop you from doing what you love in finding fulfillment. That's what passion means to me. Sandy McKenna. I really needed a dose of my own advice to get moving again, get my creative juices flowing, and dare to dream big again. As Karen says, where you tap into the energy of passion, doors start opening for you, people come into your life who vibrate that same passionate energy. I don't know about you, but I have just flung my door wide open, excited to see who and what comes in.